Greetings. This is Master Bradford, thrice knighted, benighted, magician, Illuminati. And the title of this video is Master Bradford, Slavery, Cannibalism, and Water Skiing. That's right. Slavery, cannibalism, and water skiing. If we look at the span of human history, most muscle power with some wind and water power, like water wheels and the sail to power boats, what today we'd call a boat in nautical terms, small ships. A ship is something that can travel, let's say, across the Atlantic or across the Mediterranean, from Italy to North Africa. With a, while you can travel long distances on quite small craft, Thor Heyerdahl proved that with very simple boats you could travel vast distances, and thereby humans could colonize low population density areas like New Zealand. New Zealand was first colonized by Iranians, or Aryan peoples, where a distinctive characteristic of them was blonde hair and blue eyes, which was not everyone, but some of them had blonde hair, red hair, and blue eyes, and some had brown hair and brown eyes, may have even been the majority, but they were what we would call Caucasian people today. And then 1,000 or more years after that, Polynesian peoples colonized New Zealand, and then European Caucasian people again, and then new to New Zealand are Asians like the Chinese and Filipinos, who have been allowed in some numbers to move to New Zealand. What is in a name? When I was a young man, my mail and people would address me as Master Bradford. We had servants, and they would say, "Master, would you like another helping of mashed potatoes?" And Master Bradford, would you like me to tuck you in for your nap? Because I grew up in a home where we had servants. Going back before the fossil fuel era, which was in the 1800s. I would say it started around 1820, was significant, and by 1870 it was full on with a major liquid petroleum industry with a 100-to-1 EROI ratio. That's energy returned on energy invested. And it only takes about 3 units to refine and then deliver that to the filling station. In 1941, the average U.S. person, whether they be a retiree living on a pension or a baby toddler wearing diapers and a sailor outfit, had the use every day of 39 energy slaves. A human being produces about 1/8 of a horsepower of energy. A healthy young man jogging on a treadmill needs to expend about 360,000 joules of energy. A barrel of oil has 6 billion joules of energy in it. So that is why oil is so coveted. An aspect, we are heavily polluting our air with water skiing just being an example. Marine engines that power things like a water skiing sport boat generally do not have the regulations as far as pollution. Um, just to give you a specific example, a leaf blower that's gasoline powered with an oil additive uh, produces 50 times the pollution that an automobile, which is required to have a muffler with catalytic converter, has. I say again, gasoline additive powered leaf blowers, snow blowers produce 50 times the pollution of an automobile, a sedan. So, throughout commerce and industry, there are internal combustion engines doing everything from trimming fences with trimmers powered by gasoline oil mixtures. The ingredients to the diesel fuel, to the jet fuel, to the gasoline fuel are all regulated. The thing is, there are additives that you can put into your car, truck, lawn tractor, mower that are not regulated, and the ingredients are unknown. I'm acquainted with Mr. Lucas of Lucas Oil. Our sports stadium here in Indianapolis is the Lucas Oil Stadium. And the ingredients are allowed to be copyrighted intellectual property. And excuse me, I'm not an attorney, although half the people in my family have uh, um, college degrees in law. Um, so if I don't use the right intellectual property terms, but they do not have to tell you what is in their additives. The same is true of fertilizers and pesticides. Just a little factoid for the modern tomato, over 100 different chemical um, substances are sprayed on them just for pesticides. That's over 100 different complex substances which have a significant component of oil, petroleum, natural gas in them from hydrocarbons are used to produce the tomatoes. And they are grown in areas that are not the traditional habitat for the tomato. As, they might be grown more than likely if you're getting a winter tomato from swampland in Florida. So unproductive land. It used to be a joke. I have swampland in Florida to sell you. Um, that now that swampland has been turned using massive amounts of fossil fuels into growing um, millions and millions of tomatoes. The energy slaves, the RCA Whirlpool Miracle Kitchen out of the late 1950s, early 60s, um, things like washing dishes, doing laundry. My great grandmother and grandmother spoke, and these are people from the 1%, remember, them or their servants or supervising their servants doing laundry manually. So in my lifetime, I knew two generations of women who were housewives who did their laundered their clothing, their sheets, having to go outside and beat carpets. The carpets were the kind you could pick up and carry, and you and servants would help and take them, and you'd have lines outside with posts that were strung tightly across, and you'd hang. And then they had these bamboo type wands, and they would take and then whack the carpets to clean them. So I'm only 54 years old, and I am connected to people who still had to take their carpets outside and whack them, and they had washing boards and soap that was from wax and beeswax and animal fats to wash those clothings. The whole planet, the anthropogenic, has been changed. Um, we doing fun recreational activities such as snow skiing, which uses fossil fuels. The actual skis um, are fabricated with large embodied amounts of fossil fuels. Water skis. Um, I used an O'Brien water ski. That water ski, which was a prized gift to me for slaloming, um, that's where you have a single ski. You have scuba diving type material, wetsuit material for your feet is where your feet go into, and then the ski itself was made out of fiberglass, petroleum products, and the boat powered by gasoline would pull me around, and then I would ski back and forth, jumping the wake, and then learning to do a twist and flips eventually. As water skiing progressed. And for our family, going up to Michigan and spending the warm months, usually we'd have one session of water skiing a day, and that was a great bonding activity and fun. As you might have four generations of people uh, on the ski boat watching. Usually the younger generation in their teens, 20s, into 30s, 40s would take turns water skiing behind the boat. The entire United States of America is crisscrossed with roads and highways made of asphalt, which is a distillate of oil. Uh, we use 226 billion energy slaves in the U.S. If you take how many miles there are in the U.S., that's 53,000 energy slaves per square mile. So when you're driving in rural Indiana, the state I live in, and you see those large soybean fields, or if you're in some parts of Indiana that has national or state forests, um, or the ground is too hilly to use for agriculture and they let the forest remain there, um, every square meter uh, as you look around would have an energy slave. As um, again, a human being, a fit young man, only can produce about 1/8 of a horsepower of energy cycling or running on a treadmill, and they can only do that for a certain short period of time before they're exhausted. Even the most fit would struggle to jog or bike at that intensity for an hour. And they need bathroom breaks, they need to eat, they need to sleep, and so forth, and it can only produce that energy. So it's not only that we have 53,000 plus energy slaves, if you take all of our forms of energy per square mile working, and that's including the rural areas with very low inhabitants of human beings or American citizens. So our population since 1850 has increased 6.8 times, and since the first steam engines were used to remove water from mines, we've had over an eightfold increase in human populations. In the United States of America, we use 10.2 times um, the amount of consumption of everything, whether that's wool fibers for sweaters, asphalts for roads, plastic for children's action figures, um, video game consoles and controllers made out of fossil fuel plastics. If you're a young person, and I'm hoping some of the audience for my video are young people, and I would ask you to do a scientific um, observational field trip and go to a Walmart superstore, as they're in most of North America, and or an equivalent type superstore in any country where you have access to them. And when you go in there, think about petroleum and that's natural gas and oil, and then the fossil fuel coal. And think of all the products inside the store embodied with hydrocarbon fossil fuels. The all the food, if they have the grocery section of the superstore, there's literally natural gas in the form of nitrogen, which has been cracked from methane, in the flakes of the cereal and in all the meats, and in about every product has fertilizers and pesticides. So the nitrogen actually becomes part of the plant, and then you eat the plant or the animal, and then that becomes part of you. So your cellular structure of your body is made up of methane, which has been cracked into nitrogen and other components, and the literal carbon too. There's plastics. How many products at a super box store have plastic in them? How many have polyester fibers? This transition we're going into will be one where I predict there will be a return to warlord type people. There probably will be ritual human sacrifice, and then then they dismember the individual that has been sacrificed, and then maybe in a different setting, they'll say a prayer and then eat the person. As the human population of the earth, according to my analysis, will drop by 95% plus or minus an error rate of 3.5%. We will not just go down to the sustainable population, which I would say plus or minus 50 million people of the 700 million mark. We'll probably overshoot that to the downside, but hopefully not. But we're at over 7,600,000,000 at this time, and need to get down to under 750 million max, and we'll probably overshoot that number on the downside, or undershoot, depending on how you look at it. We've overshot the Earth's carrying capacity, and on the way down, fighting for scarce resources, we'll probably overshoot it on the downside. The human population was down to 6 to 8 million Homo sapiens in hunter-gatherer bands, with the median size of 150 people. That's what we're engineered by our environment, by the Earth. So we are on a rock planet in the Milky Way galaxy, orbiting the Great Attractor at over 470,000 miles an hour. We're on a. It's like being on a submarine where you're dependent on the food, water, electricity that can be generated by your submarine's nuclear, uranium fueled reactor or diesel powered submarine. Is an analogy to what we are on Earth. It has finite capacity to produce minerals such as copper for power grids. The return on tar sands of Canada. Canada is a colony of the United States of America that we were given as payment for the Second World War and helping the United Kingdom win the Second World War. Canada produces bitumen embodied tar sands. They only do the basic mining, and then it goes to refineries such as Whiting, Indiana, where it is then turned into highly valued products. But if you take the diesel powered machine in the tar sands of Alberta, and then you put that back into a diesel powered machine at the filling station, let's say the Royal Dutch Petroleum filling station here, not far from where I live, that is actually not, that's an energy sink. When that truck is filled up with diesel, let's say it's a city vehicle, at the city filling station, the city's buying thousands and thousands of gallons of diesel fuel for their fleet of vehicles to maintain the roads, fill holes, and cut the grass, and all those kind of activities of all the public land that the city is responsible for. Only about 35% of that diesel fuel is used in work. The other 65, based on the laws of thermodynamics, is entropy heat released into the environment, and it's worse in the summer than in the winter as they run better, let's say when it's minus 5 degrees Celsius, than they do when it's 26 degrees Celsius. That's just the way the laws of thermodynamics and engines work, which I found fascinating when I was trained to be an engineer. The laws of thermodynamics, of the mathematical models that describe nature, as they all seem to be inconsistent with each other. The one that seems to most consistently describe nature is the laws of thermodynamics. It's about the best model that scientists have been able to come up with in describing nature. So if you take the amount of energy it takes to get the tar sands oil out of the ground, refine it, get it to the filling station, and then actually use it to do work, let's say take hot asphalt out in a truck to fill holes in the asphalt concrete roads of the city so that people can commute back and forth to work and get all the food and products back and forth to the big box stores and grocery stores. It is an energy sink, probably at best. It has an energy ratio of 1 to 1. This is Master Magician Bradford Donald Keller Townsend, and this has been a Forward Research Report. The 29th of October, the year 2018 of the Common Era. Have a wonderful day.